out on your website as early as August 27th. So we have at least almost a full 2 weeks prior to this, that not only the time of the event, but the location, the exact location of the UVU courtyard. So when you have over 10 days of planning, and it sounds like that Tyler already was familiar with the campus to begin with, like a lot of the mystery of this starts to go out the window.
Well,
I've honestly never heard her say that before. I mean, maybe she did, but it definitely didn't sound like that until now. My gut says Erica Kirk probably spilled something in that private meeting. Maybe they told Candace something big behind those doors and people are already whispering, did she turn on her own audience? Just kidding. But let's be real, the internet's been buzzing nonstop with theories. Some folks swear her whole vibe shifted overnight. They're saying she must have gotten that call, took the deal, and decided it was time to zip it. Others are saying she simply realized it wasn't worth the chaos anymore. But maybe, just maybe, this isn't about betrayal at all. Maybe it's what happens when two strong personalities are on opposite sides of something emotional and they finally come face to face. Because when that happens, things always start to look a little different. Now, I know the general take online right now is that Candace backed down, and that's what everyone's talking about. But honestly, that's not the full picture. And I'll leave that deeper part for later because the real storm is just starting. She's still clapping back at that so-called hit piece from the New York Times, and she even threw another jab at Tim Pool. And don't worry, we're circling back to Erica Kirk later in this episode because what went down there deserves its own moment. But let's pause on that for a sec because this part really matters. When two people who've been beefing online finally talk in person, something shifts. Even if they don't agree, at least they finally understand what the other one meant. It's different when you hear someone explain their side to your face. You start to see them as human again, not just a screen name or a headline, because deep down, most people, especially those with real emotional awareness, aren't built for full-on face-to-face conflict unless they absolutely have to. And that's what makes this moment so wild. When someone's right in front of you, it's different. You don't actually want conflict.
Conform with what is exactly being proposed by the state of Utah and the FBI in the charging documents.
Yeah, and we can attest, Andrew Cipher, who's our head of field, Charlie sometimes throw the events out, 7-10 days in advance. If something opened up in his schedule, he would be able to do these outdoor events, a pretty quick turn. And so those whole that whole theory kind of goes out the window.
You might get heated online, sure, but face to face, that energy fades real quick. Honestly, I'll admit it. I've used this platform to call people out before because sometimes it feels easier when you can pick your moment and go in hard from behind a screen. But unless there's a really strong reason, I'm not the type to hold deep grudges. Anyway, enough about that. Let's get into it because things are about to get wild. I was actually going to save this for later, but you know what? We're doing it right now. So picture this, I'm mid-recording, my phone lights up with a private number and something told me to pick it up. And guess who was on the other end? Hunter Kozak. Yeah, him. I wouldn't normally answer an unknown number, but I'd been waiting for a call from some people whose calls you always answer no matter what. Before I tell you more about that conversation, let me just say, what just happened ties straight into the whole Erica Kirk situation. And trust me, this twist is something no one saw coming. Now, for context, before all this chaos, I went on Angela Rose's show, and we ended up debating one of the craziest topics ever. Let's just say I didn't hold back when it came to calling out how the so-called ending of that story didn't add up. We had a real back and forth about what's real and what's not, and I'm telling you, that exchange was intense. So back to this mysterious phone call. I talked to Hunter Kozak, and I'll leave most of those details for later because it's just too fresh. But here's the thing. This call happened right as new info about Erica Kirk started circulating. The timing couldn't have been more suspicious. Something big just shifted behind the scenes. And this is the kind of stuff that changes everything. So yeah, stay tuned, because what's about to unfold next in this Erica Kirk saga, it's not just shocking, it's explosive. Anyway, where was I even going with that? My brain's been running 1,000 miles a minute. I could have checked my notes, but honestly, let's just roll with it and hit play. So here's what clicked for me just now. Gary Melton. Yeah, that guy.
So, unless I am mistaken, and I am not perfect, but I do feel like we worked really hard to see when this location was first revealed. The first time that we found that the courtyard was mentioned, because Charlie's speaking at events, so your assumption would be they're inside, right? You have no idea where it is, so it's not like you can see whether you have a shot.
He's from Paramount Tactical, and it just hit me that he's the one who's been openly calling out Candace lately. He's got that no-nonsense, straight-to-the-point kind of attitude, and while he's definitely critical of her, he doesn't come across as fake at all. My guess? He's not getting paid to say anything. He just genuinely believes what he's saying. And that's what makes his stance so interesting. See, I don't think Gary's one of those people who just throws shade for clout. He's got real conviction behind his words. I think he just disagrees with her deeply. Maybe he feels like she's switched lanes or changed motives, but to me, I've never seen her as someone pretending. She always seemed to truly believe what she's saying, even when it's controversial. There was only one moment that ever made me stop and think, wait a second. And that was when she flat out said the US government was definitely involved. Then, in her next episode, she kind of shifted, and that's when I went, hold up, how are we jumping from maybe to definitely so fast? That's literally the only time she's ever made me question her consistency. And here's the wild part. Remember Sky Valdez? Yeah, the same person who made that eerie song called Charlie Kirk Gone at 31. It dropped about 3 weeks before the tragedy even happened. And if that wasn't enough, right around that same time, within maybe a day or two, she posted this drawing that sent chills down my spine. It showed a figure lying flat in a shooting stance holding a rifle. Beside them, the word roof was written. And in the background, a mountain range that looked identical to the real one from the location where the shot was said to have come from. I'm talking identical to every ridge, every shadow, the whole thing. When you lay that artwork over the actual image, it's like a perfect match. I mean, come on, how do you even explain that away? The precision is too eerie to brush off as coincidence.
That we found that was on September 2nd. The local media mentioned on KMYU that Charlie was speaking at UVU in the courtyard, okay? That's the first time that we found this. If I am wrong, please tag me, because what he's referring to on August 27th that happened, which we have on our timeline as well, and this is why I love a timeline, is that TPUSA, UVU, and the local BYU chapter shared a graphic announcing that Charlie was coming to UVU, but there were absolutely no location details mentioned.
Unless we're all just living in some strange simulation, that's the kind of overlap that's hard to ignore. I never really gave it much thought before because I'd seen a lot of outdoor sketches and figured it was random. But now that I'm thinking about it, most of them weren't like that. Most art people post online is just abstract or indoors, but this one, it lined up way too neatly. Something about it doesn't sit right. It's strange, unsettling even. There's just too much detail for it to be chance. Like, why would they even do that outdoors, right? But then again, it makes a little sense. That courtyard setup looks pretty good, and September weather can be perfect for something like that. Still, my mind is spinning trying to piece all this together, especially with this whole situation involving Hunter Kozak. I'm stuck between what I think and what I feel I should do next. It's a lot to process. Anyway, let's move forward. You can tell even she's reacting differently to all this. Like, when you look at Paramount Tactical, the whole vibe is serious. No nonsense, straight shooters, literally and figuratively. You don't play games with people like that. Even Candace seemed to drop her usual confidence for a second, almost like she was second-guessing herself. She said something that sounded like, maybe I got that wrong, which you never hear from her. And that's how you know this situation is getting real. So let's rewind and listen to what she actually said about her sit-down with Erica Kirk, because this part might be the biggest clue yet. Apparently, during that private meeting, Erica may have shared something solid, something Candace could actually verify. Whatever it was, it clearly changed her tone. Now Candace sounds like she's leaning toward believing Tyler Robinson might have been involved after all, and that's huge. Because if the wife knew something that serious, that completely flips how people have been seeing the situation, that's a massive shift. And honestly, it might explain a lot of her recent behavior. Suddenly, things that didn't add up before are starting to make sense. You can practically hear it in her voice. She's realizing new information changes everything. And I have to say,
so that actually does shred the idea that he could have practically gone and scaled rooftops before September 2nd. That's the first public mention is September 2nd. So they announced the event on August 27th, as he says, no location details. And then on September 2nd, there are location details provided by local media for the first time. Prove me wrong, okay? Prove me wrong if I'm inaccurate, because I do think that we were
I've been saying this from the very start. My gut told me from day one that this wasn't the work of one lone person. There had to be more people in the picture, maybe some kind of network behind the scenes. It just never felt like a solo act to me. Now, let's be clear. I'm not saying Tyler Robinson was innocent or guilty, but there were always signs pointing toward more people being there that day. I always said it was possible that Lance Twiggs, Tyler's roommate, might have played a bigger role than anyone realized. There were whispers about him being present that day, and honestly, it lines up too neatly to ignore. But again, I never heard Candace directly say she believed Tyler Robinson was involved until now. That's what makes this so shocking. This is a total game changer, and it feels like the story's about to turn in a direction no one saw coming, and then she kind of pulls back, says, never mind, and moves on, which only makes it more suspicious. Because when someone suddenly stops mid-thought like that, it usually means the truth hit a little too close for comfort. Whatever was said in that meeting between Candace and Erica clearly hit deep. It wasn't just small talk, it was something that made Candace rethink her entire stance. And now, with all these new names and clues floating around, it feels like we're standing right on the edge of another bombshell moment in this wild saga. So apparently, there's no new info yet, but still, something about this doesn't add up. I might be missing something, but honestly, I didn't think Candace had ever said she believed Tyler Robinson was directly involved. That's why I kept saying that even though I didn't agree with her on every detail, it didn't mean I was against her overall point. I truly thought she and I were on opposite ends of this one. But maybe not after all. And let's be real, she's sharp, she doesn't jump to conclusions without reason, but here's the thing, I can't figure out where she got that sudden confidence from. Like, how could she sound so sure that he didn't pull the trigger when we don't even have the full picture yet? There's barely any official info out there. It's wild trying to guess what made her shift her stance so strongly.
Why do I feel like the public's being gaslit on this? There's been nothing that's convincing. There are so many commentators who have gone out and said to you, it's overwhelming. The evidence is overwhelming. The text messages that don't have a date, that don't even sound real, that's overwhelming. That to me feels really fake and gay. I really do want to say that to every commentator that is out there trying to tell the public and insisting that if you say it enough times it'll become real, you're actually just being dishonest. And I offered that a more honest way to communicate would be to say, we think he's involved. We feel strongly, I've said that, I think he's involved. We are very hopeful that throughout this investigation, we are going to get that concrete thing.
Now, if investigators told her something solid, like we've got a strong case and here's why, then okay, that's one thing. If they broke it down legally and she understood the logic behind it, that makes sense. That's what a good legal team does. They help you understand how the pieces fit together. But when someone says 100% certainty in cases like this, that's where I get skeptical. Because in the real world, nothing that complicated ever comes with total certainty, especially when you're dealing with people who have real influence. Because let's be honest, in those upper levels, the rules can feel flexible. They can twist definitions, shift charges, and bend the system until it fits their narrative. It's not always about justice, or it's about who's controlling the story. And that's why I get what Candace might be thinking, where she's been through her share of media heat. She's seen how powerful forces can change the meaning of truth just by controlling headlines. You can't trust the system blindly when the system itself keeps rewriting its own playbook. Anyway, moving forward, she dives right into addressing that so-called hit piece the New York Post dropped on her. And let me tell you, she did not hold back. Before we get into that clip, think about it. Would anyone honestly disagree that the media landscape has changed completely? It's not like the old days where there were dozens of independent news outlets fighting to break the truth. Back then, people could actually dig, cross-check, and verify. Now, everything funnels through just a handful of giant corporations controlling nearly all the big platforms and news agencies. So when someone tries to fact-check a claim these days, it's often the same handful of sources echoing each other, repeating the same script. It's all about who gets to tell the story first and how loud they can shout it. Candace's point hits hard here. She's saying that what used to be called research has turned into a recycled media loop, and she's not wrong. We're in an era where 6 mega companies practically own the entire media machine. 6! Think about that. 6 entities deciding what stories trend, what gets buried, and who gets painted as the villain. So yeah.
We're at right now. That's just the stage that we are at. That is not what we are getting from them. That is like, I just feel like that's really important to let you guys know. Let the gaslighting stop. They have what you have, okay? There is nothing else. They are in an investigative stage. Erica has been named as the victim. They will know more in this May hearing, which is the...
When she called out the Post for twisting her words and running with a one-sided take, it struck a nerve. Because she's been through enough to know when she's being targeted. This wasn't just a casual critique. It was a setup for damage control, trying to make her look unstable or inconsistent right when she started gaining more traction with her narrative. That's the dangerous part. when the people holding the microphone decide whose story gets believed. Once they label someone controversial, every word that person says gets twisted, edited, or taken out of context. And that's exactly what's happening here. It's not about facts anymore, it's about framing. And Candace, for better or worse, is right in the middle of it again. That report was actually from a couple of years back, and honestly, it's probably even worse now. The number of big companies controlling everything has only gotten smaller. Every time a merger happens, like when Netflix or another giant swallows up another network or studio, the circle tightens. So yeah, if you're wondering who really owns the mainstream media today, it's not rocket science. The names change, but the power stays in the same few hands. It's wild how people freak out over simple observations these days. Like, you can't even make a factual point without someone twisting it into something it's not. Just acknowledging differences or trends in industries gets spun into outrage. People act like basic stats are offensive now. It's exhausting, man. Anyway, back to the weird part, because this next bit blew my mind. There's this Egyptian plane situation that's honestly just bizarre. Apparently, an Egyptian aircraft was seen trailing the same routes Erica Kirk was traveling on, and that's raised a lot of eyebrows. I'm not saying it proves anything sinister, but it's strange enough to make anyone wonder what's really going on. And here's where things start to look calculated, because when you piece it together, it starts to feel like someone's trying to send her a message. Think about it. That plane detail is oddly specific. If it's not random, it might be their way of showing her that they're watching, that they can shape whatever narrative they want about her. That's not just weird, that's intimidating. And then there's that story they pushed about her supposedly tossing her car keys to someone and saying, "Park it."
Will cause hearing. That's what the lawyer told me. It's probable cause hearing, and that's when they will see the evidence. That's when they get to present the evidence, why they are going to stand there before a judge and be like, yes, we need to move this forward. It's not just an affidavit. We're not pulling together scraps. We have concrete evidence. Until then, okay, until we all get on the same page and understand what else they have, I am very confident stating the opposite of all of my, I guess, well-paid peers, in that I don't believe that Tyler Robinson pulled the trigger. And
the media made it sound like she was being arrogant or elitist, but in reality, she didn't even drive there. She had a driver. That's not an accident. That's a deliberate move. Because out of all the ways they could try to embarrass someone, they chose that exact detail, something that never happened, just to paint her in a certain light. That's not random storytelling. That's a message, plain and simple. And you know what? I've seen this kind of thing before. Let me give you an example. A good friend of mine, another content creator, let's call him JD, went through something similar. He once did a deep dive on Scientology on his show, and everything he said was backed by public records. Nothing wild, just factual stuff. But the way he delivered it, direct and fearless, clearly rubbed the wrong people the wrong way. Not long after strange things started happening, it wasn't anything overtly threatening, but enough to make him uncomfortable, like someone was trying to remind him that certain topics are off limits. He told our group chat about it, and I remember replying something like, "Man, I know way too much about Scientology." At first, I didn't even realize how serious he was being. I thought we were just talking content. That's when it hit me. These powerful groups don't always come at you head on. They don't need to. They'll twist stories, plant little narratives, and use media framing to make you look like the villain while keeping their own hands clean. They know how to play the system perfectly. And now, watching what's happening to Erica, it's got the same energy. It's like she's getting that same kind of warning. Quiet but unmistakable. The timing, the false stories, even the weird plain detail, it all feels too deliberate to be random. Something about this whole situation screams control, manipulation, and quiet intimidation. And that's why this story just keeps getting darker the deeper you look. So JD hits me up privately and goes, "Hey man, how likely is it that Scientology will actually come after me?" And at first I tried to calm him down. I told him, look, there are so many creators calling that group out these days. They can't chase everyone. I figured he was probably safe, but then he drops the bomb. He says he just got a package from Scientology sent straight to his house using his real legal name. And that's when everything changed. That's not random. That's personal. That's their way of saying, we see you. You don't send something like that by mistake. That's a warning, plain and simple. It means they've done their homework. They know who you are, where you live, and that you've been talking.
And I said this in front of the lawyer, because I don't know why I'm like this. I was like, you might need a new lawyer. I was like, because this person's trying to sell to you that this is solid. One of the rules that me and my husband have is that if you have a lawyer that tells you like you're 100% going to win, it's very clear that you're going to win, you need a new lawyer. Okay, that's a cheerleader. That's not a lawyer.
Once that line is crossed, it's not subtle anymore. It's a message. I told him straight up, If he keeps going at them, he should expect a reaction. They follow a pattern step by step like a playbook. I said, it's your choice whether to keep pushing, but you need to know this is real now. It's just like how other groups move in silence when they want to send a signal. They don't need to make threats. The message is already in the action. Look at what happened with that whole New York Post situation. They didn't need to call Candace directly. They just ran a story claiming she threw her keys at someone, trying to make her look arrogant. But everyone close to her knows she had a driver that day. That story wasn't about the act, it was about humiliation. It was them saying, we can say anything we want about you and you can't stop us. Same energy, different playbook, and that's what makes it all so chilling. These powerful media networks know exactly what they're doing. They know how to twist reality just enough to create a new version of the truth. It's not about whether something really happened. It's about what people believe happened. And honestly, I get why Candace reacts the way she does. I've always felt that connection to her. We're wired the same way, intense, outspoken, unfiltered. I look at her and think, yeah, I get it. Because when people misunderstand you for just being blunt or honest, that frustration hits deep. She's not the type to stick to a script, and neither am I. I've tried. Back in my old corporate job, I had to work off those boring PowerPoint slides, doing presentations I didn't care about. It paid the bills, sure, but man, it drained my soul. Reading off someone else's words never felt natural. What I do now, talking like this, breaking stories, analyzing the truth, this is what I'm built for. The other stuff, completely against how my brain works. Anyway, back to the story. The lies about her have been piling up, and that's why the next part is so interesting. It's time to talk about Tim Pool, because this whole thing took another wild turn. Apparently, Tim actually said Candace only had one overweight guy as her security detail. Seriously, that's what he said, and I hadn't even seen the clip yet, but everyone was buzzing about it. Like, why even make that comment? What's the point? Unless maybe he's chasing numbers too, because let's be honest, when you talk about Candace, your views skyrocket. Everyone knows that. Now, I'm not saying Tim got paid off. Maybe it's just strategy. In this game, controversy sells. You pick a target, spark a reaction, and the clicks come rolling in. I've seen it myself. Covering her stories always brings more engagement because people are deeply invested, whether they love her or can't stand her. But here's the thing. Lately, it feels like there's more behind his tone. Something about the way he talks about her now just feels different, sharper, more personal. And that's got people wondering if something else is going on behind the scenes. Meanwhile, I've been feeling this growing frustration too, like everything's boiling over. I spent 3 hours earlier today combing through new material, breaking it all down line by line, and the more I saw, the angrier I got, because the pattern keeps repeating. The same media playbook, the same twisting of words, the same obsession with turning personal differences into full-blown feuds. And while everyone's watching the headlines and pointing fingers, the real game is happening behind closed doors, where reputations are shaped, alliances shift, and stories are rewritten to fit someone's agenda. That's the part people forget. And it's why this story is far from over. So get this, I posted that video with the scientist who claims he can prove Charlie Kirk wasn't actually targeted the way people think. I edited it with surgical precision, making sure every second was safe for monetization. Nothing risky, nothing that could trigger the algorithm. I spent hours on that thing, double checking every frame. I didn't even care about the money this time. I just wanted to protect the channel after finally getting out of the penalty zone. And guess what happened? They still flagged it again after all that work. You can't imagine how frustrating that feels. Like, I followed every rule, kept it clean, and they still hit it. Unreal. But let's talk about what's really going on here. If someone's going on air accusing her of lying over and over again, saying, she's lying, she's lying, she's lying, at what point does that become defamation? Because if she can prove he's spreading false claims, that could turn serious real fast. It's wild to think about. Honestly, I don't understand why he's so mad. Unless maybe something else is motivating him, because now he's popping up on other people's shows talking like he's got inside info, and it's just odd. Makes me wonder if someone out there is giving him a reason to keep pushing this narrative. You know, like, you hate her anyway, right? Let's make it worth your while. It's not hard to imagine someone with real resources whispering, hey, don't worry about your financial situation. We can fix that. You're in debt? We've got the money. All you gotta do is play along. It's that kind of quiet persuasion that makes you question people's motives. And the way he's been acting lately, it's hard not to notice something's shifted. Then again, maybe he didn't take a dime. Maybe it's just personal. But the anger, it's definitely there. You can see it in his face, hear it in his tone. It's almost like he's trying to prove something, but in doing that, he's exposing his own inconsistencies. Because the second he calls her a liar, then turns around and says something false himself, it's like, hold up, who's really twisting the truth here? That's where his credibility starts to crumble. It's hard to take someone seriously when their story keeps shifting every time a camera's on. Anyway, Once I got past the frustration, I started feeling better. Because honestly, at this point, it's becoming obvious that something changed behind the scenes. His talking points, his tone, even the way he chooses his words, it all feels influenced like someone else is pulling the strings. Now, let's talk about that Turning Point USA live stream during Candace's meeting with Erica Kirk. From what I've heard, they both agreed there'd be no trash talk before or after. They wanted to keep things respectful, but based on the clips I saw, it doesn't look like everyone stuck to that agreement. There's definitely some shade being thrown where there shouldn't be. And I'm glad I watched it because it confirmed something I've been sitting on for a while. I'd hinted before that I had inside info I couldn't fully reveal. And yeah, it turns out I'm still not allowed to speak on it publicly. But let me just say this, my personal view on who's responsible for what happened lines up pretty closely with what's being hinted at now. Only difference? I don't believe it was done alone. That's the part nobody wants to say out loud, that maybe there was more than one person involved, that there's more to the story than what we've been told, because it all points to something deeper, something that still hasn't come to light. And what's even crazier, there was supposed to be a student from the Unite America tour who'd planned to attend that same event. That student was the one set to ask the final question on stage. The same stage where all this went down. The timing of that alone is enough to make you pause. Like, how does that even happen? Too many coincidences, too many connections. It's impossible not to wonder if someone was planning every move. The more you peel back, the more tangled it gets. And every time new info drops, the story takes another wild turn. There's way more going on beneath the surface than anyone's admitting right now, and it's just getting started. So what do you think? Is this all coincidence, or are we watching something way bigger unfold? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives, and don't forget to share this video so more people can see what's really going on. I'll see you on the next one.